No question that not just Donald Trump, but the whole news cycle has been very good for business. I think if we were talking 2 years ago, I think we'd be saying that the surge was very closely focused on the election and on the Washington cycle. What we're seeing now is much more broadly based. We're seeing lots of different kind of stories moving the dial. Investigations, our Me Too coverage. Now, I guess
the
a year ago,
Me Too coverage, the Facebook coverage has been really quite brilliant.
Tech and more broadly, our business coverage, we think, has got stronger and stronger. We've got more investigative teams. We're breaking more stories across a really wide front. And by the way, features, lifestyle, culture, that breadth of what the Times does, it's all beginning to work for us. And, you know, when I think about what we're doing, it's not totally unlike what Netflix is trying to do, like a big package of very high quality content, which is what, if you're thinking of subscribing, you want to make sure as a consumer you're going to get really good value and a real breadth of content.
Sure, but one thing that's happened over the last decade or two is that all of those pieces have been spun out on their own. So classified ads gave rise to Craigslist, and you know, you've seen what's happened with almost, if you go through every section of the traditional newspaper, how they've turned into standalone brands, even Realtor.com, which helps News Corp quite a bit, as you're aware. So, you know, does that mean that there's still a place for people to come to the traditional newspaper for what it has to offer, or do you have to have a foot in each of those new digital places?
Well, firstly, look at the numbers. We've got probably 3 times as many subscribers as we did 5 years, or certainly very close to that. So our model is working. Though what's interesting is I think those sections which were once really driven by print advertising, they got spun off and are in many cases done better separately on the internet. We are looking, and as you know, we've got 2 very successful digital products, Cooking and Crosswords, both of which take offers, propositions which are deep historical propositions from the Times and turn them into different pieces of service journalism products which people can use in a different way. But even within the master product, the main New York Times digital product, people are finding lots of different kinds of content they really like. And the fact that we're driving our subscriptions is because people get very engaged, and we know that one of the reasons they engage with us is because of the breadth of the content they see.
265,000 new digital subscribers in the latest quarter. Does that mean that they are subscribing only digitally, or does that combine people who are taking both at the same time?
We define print subscribers. All of our print subscribers get digital rights as well. They're counted separately. So these guys are people...
Well, I'm glad I'm counted separately because I'm a print subscriber. Okay, good. Now, let me ask you another thing. Of the people who are solely subscribing digitally, what is their profile, both in terms of demography and geography, as compared to the people who subscribe to the print edition?
I want to say, in the broadest sense, that their average age is a bit younger. I mean, actually, significantly, as you would think. And the geographical spread is much broader. I mean, the most obvious point to make is the domestic physical New York Times. We have an international paper. The domestic physical New York Times, you can't get it in the rest of the world. You know, mid-teens percent and rising all the time of these subscribers live, you know, on the other continents, the other countries, so that we've got a global subscribing audience as well. Even in America, the geographical spread is much broader. The single best market for digital subscriptions in New York Times is California.
Is that right? Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Now, so tell me about the subscription growth. You said it has quadrupled over the, what did you say, the past 10 years? In total? I think from 1.2 million to 4 million or something like that?
We're getting close to tripling. I mean, at the very peak of print, early 90s, New York Times probably had about 1.7, 1.8 million subscribers. Total subscribers today, we announced at the end of last year, 4.3 million. So we have a much bigger paying base than the New York Times has had in its history. And frankly, we think we're building a bigger digital subscription business than any news organization in the world at the moment. And we announced today that by 2025, we want to get through the 10 million mark.
Are those digital subscriptions, as you're talking about getting to the 10 million mark, do those include people who just want the cooking or just want the crosswords?
Yeah, I mean, we're saying it's a total number of, as it were, subscription relationships. That could be print, it could be cooking, it could be crosswords. we think a lot of the growth is going to come from the digital New York Times, the core, the kind of master news and opinion brand. But and we, by the way, we think of 10 million as a milestone too. The numbers suggest we can aspire to a significantly bigger number than 10 million.
I was going to say, is there any prospect for spinning out a third alongside those
We're working on a parenting product. We already have, separately, it's not currently a subscription product, Wirecutter, which is a consumer testing site we acquired. No, we see a constellation of, if you like, satellite products which people associate with the Times, but which we can also, quite apart from selling separately, we can also bundle, so we can create higher priced packages which include these other products. And so we can begin to get the yield of a subscriber.
How big a part of your future or your present is podcasting and video?
Well, we're incredibly excited. We have what was last year's most downloaded podcast on Apple iTunes, The Daily. It's been
The Daily, I get it on my, whatever it's called, Alexa.
3/4 of that very large growing audience is 40 or under. So again, that's about reaching out to younger demographics. In June, we launched a TV show. I mean, people talk about video. This is a TV show we're making for FX and Hulu. It's going to be a weekly news program dealing with 1 or 2 stories per week. We want to kind of try to reinvent the way a certain kind of news is done on TV as well. And both with the Daily and the Weekly, we want to scale those businesses too.
How do you feel about the assaults on the institution of the media and the free press that have emanated from the White House? Everyone's
entitled to their opinion. Everyone's entitled to say they don't like the way we do our journalism. Part of the point about us is we're accountable. You can criticize us, you can sue us. It's hard to do that with every digital player, by the way.
And you can cancel.
And you can cancel. Describing journalists from the Times and elsewhere as enemies of the people and using extreme rhetoric about journalism, I think is dangerous. I think it's dangerous because it could encourage people to do crazy things in relation to news organizations and individual reporters. And last week there was a on-the-record interview. Our publisher, A.G. Salzberger, and a couple of journalists in the White House interviewed Mr. Trump again. And for the second time, our publisher had to admonish the president for the intemperate and irresponsible language he sometimes uses about journalism. So criticism, accusing us of bias, disliking what we do, I think is that the President of the United States has got as much right as anyone to do that. But there must be a limit to the aggression of the language, it seems to me.
I want to, at the risk of going long here in the control room, I'm sorry for this. I read that interview very closely, and one of the things the president said, rather plaintively, I thought, was, I'm a guy from Queens, I'm from New York, and I can't get a good story in my hometown paper. Would you dispute that he's gotten good stories in the New York Times?
I think the New York Times has actually done a very good job, for instance, in covering the great buoyancy in the US economy in recent years, the growth of jobs, and not just jobs as a whole, but jobs for, and wages for lower income individuals and households in this country. I think there are plenty of examples of the New York Times saying positive things. The key thing is our job, to be honest, is not to decide whether to treat someone positively or negatively, but to report the facts, reach objective, impartial judgments about what's going on, and to hold power to account. And our job with the President of the United States and with other powerful private sector, public sector individuals and institutions is to be on behalf of the user, the reader, someone who tells the truth.
I was just thinking about the New York Times could do very well in this environment, as you guys are, but you know the decline of local newspapers, the decline of local news coverage, and the corruption that then comes about as a result of that. You know, you guys have shown kind of how to be big and be successful in this day and age, especially when you're engaging in national politics. But there's so many communities out there that have no one looking out for what's going on.
And I should be really clear. Our scale, maybe the right strategy, the quality of our journalism, we're doing pretty well, and we're going to be hiring journalists. We're continuing to invest in journalism. No one's more aware than we are that we're an exception, and that much of journalism, local journalism, even metro journalism in the US, also some of the new digital publishers are really struggling. And you know, somewhere out there, I hope in 2019 is a conversation with the big digital platforms and within the industry about is there more we can do to support the diversity and the flourishing of all of American journalism, not just, in a sense, the lucky few.